What's up, y'all, and welcome to Neighborhood Owl's podcast. I'm your host, Neighborhood Owl, Albert Owl, 32, Mr. Evans, Coach, Money Jr., all of the above. This conversation is going to be unfiltered and cover everything from life, culture, setbacks, to growth, and everything in between. I look forward to spending this time with you and honestly engaging with you guys to get perspective that you can only give and no one else. Welcome to episode 1, part 1 of the Let's Talk About It series. In this series, we're going to discuss some things that we've done, that we've seen, that we've been around, that has made impact on our lives, whether good, bad, or indifferent. Today's episode is going to be about something that kind of made my chest tight today on the way home, and that's what let me know I was ready to talk about it. Somebody asked me about what it was like growing up in Gary. They asked me some key questions, some in-depth things about maybe some things that I've done or that I've seen or been a part of, and it was time to discuss it because I know I'm not the only one, and I know I'm not the only one that's still here who those things didn't play a foundational key piece into who they are today. So I broke this thing down into 3 different categories, right? We're going to discuss Gary as the murder capital. We're going to discuss Gary during the crack epidemic. And we're going to discuss gang culture. What I'm going to do over this series of the Let's Talk About is try to keep it chronologically in the phases that they happen within my life. And at the same time, get people to understand or realize that anybody right now between, mid-30s to mid-40s who are the people who are probably making this world go round right now were born and raised during this time. For me, growing up in Gary during the crack epidemic, right, that's late 80s, early 90s, you can only be shielded from so much. And you see a lot of things on TV that depict some things true, some things not. I feel like a lot of things focused on the East or the West Coast. But in actuality, we had things right here in our own home that we're dealing with. For me, I had cousins that were, without being politically correct, crackheads. I saw those individuals steal from grandma, steal from my family, steal from my cousins, and trade those things in for drugs. Everybody knows, or if they don't know, how I feel about my parents, right? We never had everything, but we never needed anything. And I always applaud them for that. So Christmas was always big for us in our heads anyway. Right, three kids by 20, and I remember one time, right before Christmas, our presents got stolen, all of them, by a family member, and they had to scramble to do what they had to do to make things happen. But one of my own family members took our stuff that my parents worked hard for. That's how bad crack was for people. That they would steal from their aunt, that they would steal from their cousins, right? I remember hearing Granny talk about jewelry being stolen, things of that nature. Cars, it was just rampant, right? The things that you would see on TV were the things that we really were experiencing. I remember finding, everybody remember the ceilings in their grandparents' basement where you can lift it up, you can move it, but it had that itchy yellow stuff, so if it fell on you, your neck started itching. I don't know what that was about, but anyway. I remember throwing my ball up there and hitting it, and then a glass pipe falling down, right? Out the sides of this pen. It was all glass, and the edges were kind of black. And I'm I go upstairs to my cousins, oh, what's this? Blah, blah. I found it downstairs. They were oh, just throw it away, blah, blah, blah. I'm okay. And I'm watching a movie one day, and I see somebody getting high, and I see that same pipe. And it hit me on what that was. That in our safe space that my parents and my grandparents had given us to be kids, that somebody was violating that due to their drug habits. I also remember going to the park in the valley, about 7 houses down from my grandma was the park, right? I was about 7 or 8. I remember going. I got my ball. I'm excited to go down there and hoop. I got stopped on the corner. Right. I remember him to this day. I think he's still alive to this day. Um, Pulled a baggie from underneath his tongue. It's like, look, Al, man, you trying to make some money? I'm like, man, I'm just trying to go hoop. Hey, let me teach you the game real quick. Ripped it off, showed me how to rip it off. Boom, teeth, grabbed it. If you get it from me, nobody really suspect kids. You get it from me, you take it over here, you sell it to them for this much, you bring this much back to me. I give you this much, start putting money in your pocket. Or I can take you over there to the man, and he can go this price to this price and do this for you, and you can go straight to it, or you could just hold it for us and be the guy. Like, he's breaking this down to me on the corner, and at this point, at 35, I'm sitting there alone. I learned the game at 7 or 8 years old while just trying to go play basketball. There's only so many things our parents could have sheltered us from and like kept us from. But those are instances and conversations I guess I never really talked about, never really had, or never really brought to the forefront to someone ask me that question about what it was like growing up in Gary. The other thing is being a murder capital. Gary was a murder capital around 93, 94, I believe it was. And it was tough. Like, as adults, we look back and we laugh and we think about it, but there were summers we couldn't go outside because of jail escapees. There were summers we couldn't go outside because of a serial killer on the loose. There was times we couldn't go outside because it was gang wars. There was times we couldn't do all type of things, but we still somehow had fun. Like, if you ask anyone about our memories growing up, it was fun. We remember putting the tire around the fire hydrant and opening it on a hot day and flooding the street, and there was our water park. Like, we remember all those sort of things and bury away the things that were scary for us. But in actuality, Gary being the murder capital showed us during that time, right? During the crack epidemic, there comes mass incarceration. There comes crackdown. There were bills. There were things that were passed down to combat that. And we saw that. If you ask anybody from Gary, they probably have seen a raid a day in their life. They done seen helicopters, people stretched out. I remember living in Etna off of DeKalb Street and seeing the people outside stretched out on the ground, helicopters flying over, police everywhere with big drug busts. Those things were happening left and right. The third piece of this, I would say, is gang culture. People always want to know about gangs. Is Gary really like that? Well, Gary is next to Chicago, and Chicago has a very vibrant gang culture, right? Not this Chicago. I'm talking old Chicago. If you trace a lot of gangs, they come from Chicago. Well, Gary's 30 minutes from Chicago. So, yes, we had gangs. Yes, when we were growing up, we were in gangs. But the thing about the gangs that need to get understood was we were in gangs before we knew how to do a multiplication chart. We knew the neighborhood we lived in and who we were associated with and who was who in the neighborhood before we knew how to pass a math test. It just was a part of the community, the neighborhood, the city that we grew up in. I learned how to be a leader later in my life, right? And pick and choose the avenues you want to go to. And I wouldn't even say be a leader, because even in that sense, I was leading, but in the sense of what the gangs were and those sort of things, I went along with what life was at that point. Which was, you're from this neighborhood, you're this. You're from this neighborhood, you're that. You're from this neighborhood, you don't like those people. You're from that neighborhood, you don't like those people. Well, in actuality, all of it's stupid. But when you're younger, and that's the whole culture around you, right? These people fight these people fight these people, right? That person in the middle who's with nobody gets beat up by all these people. And then you just kind of figure it out from there. We'll say those three things played a valuable part in the foundation of who I am, because I can look back and I can understand as I got older and more things started happening that we'll discuss later, that it formed that person, right? It formed that person in middle school who was fearless and was doing different things. It formed that person who ended up being a football player who was fearless on the field and they just couldn't understand the intensity and tenacity that I played with. It formed the corporate person who had seen so many foul things that he just wanted to do enough to take care of his parents so they never got to worry about stuff. It formed a person who doesn't take no for an answer and always wants to be in the front and lead because he remembers what it was like when you really didn't have a choice back then.